Hello and welcome to Starting and Scaling a Shop at Home series. We previously held a Shop at Home webinar that was really well received, but what a lot of folks requested was that we do a deeper dive, get into the more operational components of how to do each of the different processes. So this is the first of three in a series. So those three components are going to be broken out as you see here. First, today's session is going to be why start a shop at home business, why the planning is important and the components of that. Session 2 will be all around the resources that are needed to create the shop at home program as part of your business. And part 3 will be the initial processes for sales and for operations and marketing to pull it all together and then scale that business going forward. So if you will, please tune in the last Wednesday of each month, and we're going to get this moving. So welcome. My name is Daly. I'm Vice President of Product and Merchandising here at Broadloom. And I've been in the flooring industry for 31 years. And a big portion of that has actually been helping shop at home businesses grow. So other than my time in my earlier career at CCA and New York Carpet World, I actually had the opportunity to do a consulting role with Empire, as well as with Luna. And in that experience, what I was able to learn was what worked really well and what didn't. In fact, the work that we did with Luna is why Empire actually acquired them recently, so that they can incorporate the things that grow customer satisfaction, grow average job size, and at the end of the day, put more profit per lead into the company's coffers. I also had the opportunity to work with Floor Coverings International, which today has over 200 flooring franchises across the US. So through that experience, I have lots of data of what worked when you put this across the entire US and Canada. And we're going to dig into each of those components today. So again, the first topic is why shop at home. The major benefits of shop at home is bucketed into three areas. First, reach more customers. Second, that it's easily scalable. And third, the profit growth opportunity for shop at home is unlike no other. So in reaching more customers, here's a part that a lot of folks don't understand. There are more and more customers today who would rather have that Amazon-like experience, or as close as they can get to it with remodel, than visit a showroom. In fact, more than 30% of millennials don't even think they have to visit a flooring showroom to get their home remodeled. There's just an assumption that they can do everything from home. So for that customer who prefers shop at home, the demographics is almost identical to locally owned flooring store demographics. It's the same homeowner, almost identical incomes. It's not a different customer. It's just one that needs a different service. The second bullet here is that wider radius capability. The ability for you to reach customers further than what they would typically want to drive to your showroom is a big component to shop at home radius. All the data today points to 22 minutes as the max that a customer will travel for a large ticket purchase. That covers almost 90% of consumers in the market today. Do you want to be able to serve somebody that's maybe a little more than that 20-minute radius? If so, shop at home should be a consideration. And the last piece is there may be specific communities that you want to reach, that you want to do more marketing in because they are that higher end consumer or that new construction area that has now aged out of their existing floors, and it's time for them for replacements. Knowing those specific communities that you want to go into with your marketing that may be, again, beyond that 20-minute radius that most folks will travel, allows shop at home to get you a laser-focused approach to your marketing efforts. The second main reason behind reaching more customers is the ease of scalability of a shop at home business. First, the startup for a shop at home component to your business can be extremely informative. Second, the investments that you make in your business are directly tied to volume. These volume-based investments allow you to put the money in when it's the right time, not at a guess. You scale the business with more vans, more people as the leads and the sales are generated. And in a down economy, it also allows you to very easily scale it back. And third, the ability to leverage your existing operations base, installation, AP and AR, et cetera, on the back end of your business, that remains the same. You may need a remote installation warehouse if you're starting to push into a distance really far away, but you don't have to do that on day one. You can test it with marketing. You can get into that market to determine sales velocities before you have to make any investments into the infrastructure. And last, the main driver of why most folks are interested in shop at home is what it can do for your profit. First, the close rates for shop at home are higher than retail. When you look at a shop at home opportunity, those are at a minimum 50% as a target goal. Now, I know a lot of folks will say, but Neil, my close rates in my showroom are a lot higher than that. That's true, but if you actually measured close rate against every lead opportunity that you get in your business, it would be substantially lower than that. In fact, the industry data shows close rate to actual lead and customer opportunity is in the low 30s. So our ability to push that close rate higher with shop at home, because we're in the customer's home, because we can easily identify exactly what the customer needs, that gives distinct advantages to help that customer get the right floors and for months. Second, the average job size with shop at home is high. In fact, the average is 10 to 15% higher, with some stores reaching as much as 20% higher with shop at home than they do their traditional brick and mortar stores. And finally, the gross profit margin with shop at home, when you apply the tactics that I'll be sharing with you over this series, will allow you to close at 50% gross profit margin as the norm. In fact, that's where most of the shop at home stores are moving towards today, if they're not already there. So there's lots of great reasons why you should consider a shop at home as an expansion to your business today. To do so, though, it takes planning. And I will tell you, it's a very different business plan than what you would consider brick and mortar. So I'm just going to hit some of the highlights that we ask you to consider when creating your business plan for shop at home. I'm going to review a summary, marketing plan, sales plan, what to look at for operations and budget from a very high level. You have all of these, of course, in your regular business, but it's probably been a while since you created an actual business plan. So I'm going to share some tips with you. First, on the summary. The summary is actually the one thing that most people stall on, and it actually is why most people don't get a business plan written. They're trying to figure out exactly what they want the summary plan to be. Most of the experts will tell you, don't write the summary first. We think as operators predominantly, and the operator has the ability to figure out all the details. So write that summary last. Figure out all the other intricacies and details of how you want to run that business, and then create that summary last, and then come back to it often. We always say read that summary often after you've written it last, because it allows you to stay focused on your objectives, or in the chance you have to change a goal for your business, to make that modification and share it with your team. Your summary should just include what you're going to be trying to work toward, where the demographics are that you're trying to reach in physical locations, who's assigned to each of those roles and responsibilities, and at the end of the day, aligning the team on why you're doing this for your business. It should be very high level. It should not be a lot of details. In fact, your summary might be 2 paragraphs or less. So your summary is actually one of the least important components at the beginning. So write it last once you've got the details figured out on paper of what all those add up to be. Because once you start getting into the intricacies of operations, you're going to find that's going to change that summary probably a lot. Second, a marketing plan specifically for shop at home is needed. It needs to be territory specific for that customer that you're trying to reach. You need to define your radiuses or DMAs or communities specific for this. The goal here is lead generation. So the tactics that you will apply for lead generation are different than what you would do for retail. It's all about booking the appointment. Nothing else really matters in that marketing method. So if your ads are image ads for your store today, such as things that don't have a strong call to action, the marketing for the shop at home will again be very different. High call to action, book the appointment is the message. Your marketing needs to have KPIs tied to it, like anything else in your business, key performance indicators that say, here's where my marketing needs to be, and here's how much I need to spend in order to capture enough customers. Now, most brick and mortar stores today are investing only a small percentage for marketing because they have the luxury of creating a strong, loyal customer base that creates repeat and referral. In fact, 2/3 of your brick and mortar store business is probably repeat and referral business that your marketing cost was zero. That's not the case with Shop at Home. Shop at Home requires an investment somewhere typically between 7 and 10% of what you want to close for sales in order to capture that lead opportunity. Yes, it's an expensive component to Shop at Home. That marketing cost at 10% to go really aggressive into the market sounds high. But when you factor in the higher gross profit margins that you can generate when done the right way, it more than covers that investment. You've got to make enough to spend enough to expand that reach. So get very real about that number. If you plan on that 7 to 10%, depending on your market, how competitive it is for advertising, you're going to be really close in that number. But take a look at your actual cost of sales and as it relates to getting out to that market as well to make sure that you can be competitive. You need to have specific timelines tied into your business plan and marketing. You know, it takes in the world of digital and traditional Main Street marketing about 6 months for your marketing to get good traction. So knowing that, you can't overspend at the beginning and go crazy on marketing spend because it gets so expensive so fast. For that reason, one of the most cost-effective things that folks do is start in the market, start at a reasonable amount, and they run the leads themselves as the owner or general manager of the business. So at the beginning, they're not paying a commission to a salesperson. It also gives them the experience that's needed for coaching and training. So in those timelines that you're working here for your marketing plan, I'm just encouraging you to look at how can I get into this space affordably and get enough leads so that I can create the sales to create that flywheel effect. How do I get it to build out and grow so I have enough? And we'll talk about that a little bit more in future series in this, again, last Wednesday of each month. So be sure to tune in on that as we dig into how to capture that effect. And yes, that means you have to have a separate marketing budget specifically for this so that you can, again, track it against your goals. On the sales plan, the biggest thing here, again, is appointment setting and confirmation. How are you going to do that as part of your business today? A casual inviting a customer into your showroom is the norm in retail. But with appointment setting, it's very different. You've got to lock in that time as your number one goal. And then you've got to have a plan on how you're going to confirm with your customers as well. You don't want to be driving an hour in each direction from your store, as an example, and the customer not be there. So we want to have a very specific process built for that. And ideally, that's not the salesperson doing the confirmation call. It may make sense initially for you to think about that as, well, the salesperson's ongoing. We need them to start building a relationship with the customer and figure out what samples we're bringing out to the house. We're going to dig into that really deep in future series as well. Because what the data says is if the salesperson's the one doing the confirming, there's actually less appointments for them. We're humans. We have a tendency to move schedules to meet our needs, not necessarily optimization. So figure having somebody on your staff that can help with that. A lot of the most successful businesses out there with Shop at Home do 100% of their appointment setting and confirmations through call centers so that it allows them to not just outsource it, but have people that are trained in knowing just that. Book that appointment, get that confirmation, and don't move those appointments. The numbers actually look better. You need to have a clearly defined sales process for on-site. When they arrive to the time that they finish their follow-up with the customer, that process has to be specified so that it covers all the things that's important to the customer and gives you the customer everything they need to say yes, and you close more sales. The most important part of that is consistent process. Processes, again, is our third session we're going to be covering. But this one's really important, folks. You can't just go in and try to do everyone as a one-off. That's not scaling. If you're going to have a team of shop-at-home people working for you, you have to be able to lead and coach that process for optimization. And again, that's not a bunch of one-off scenarios. It is a written, specific process that they do as part of their in-home visit with the customer. I'm not saying it has to be a canned pitch, but there are components that are critical that have to be done every single visit. Follow-up. The follow-up time with Shop at Home is actually condensed, much shorter as part of your sales plan than you would typically do for retail. Retail, again, is a little more loose. But with Shop at Home, you want to accelerate that follow-up plan using a CRM that allows you to have a specific cadence for communications, and making sure that those are being held is really important for Shop at Home. Again, you want to push that timeline shorter. 3 touches within the first week, if your job hasn't closed, is pretty normal with Shop at Home follow-up today. In addition to that, you need a process for escalation and rehash. What that means is if your salesperson hasn't got a yes after about a week, there needs to be involvement with your GM or with the owner to say, hi, I'm the GM or owner. I want to make sure that you know we're here to take care of you, and how can we move your project forward? That's important, again, just to get that second voice sometimes to optimize sales. And the last piece here is your budget. Most folks doing Shop at Home today have to have people that are highly paid in order to work the hours that are needed to support this type of program. The sales compensation for this, if you want to shoot me an email or give me a call, happy to discuss it. But I can assure you, if you're going to expect people to work nights and weekends on a regular basis, the top salespeople in the country will work for you if you pay them enough. A 10% is not unheard of at all when you look at compensation rates. So how to structure that, again, comes back from, do I charge enough to be able to do the marketing and to hire the best and to keep that salesperson in the field when the customer wants them there? And that's commonly nights and weekends, because if you're working with folks like me who work during the day, you need to have that space availability for me at night. From an operations plan standpoint, appointment scheduling and resets has to be your first clearly defined process. That appointment scheduling and resets has to be scripted so it can be rehearsed and optimized and taught to the team. We're not going to, of course, do a canned pitch in the customer's home, but when it comes to call answering and resets, that can absolutely be scripted for optimization. Second, you need to have a plan for the actual vehicle that's doing the appointments and the samples. We're going to again dig into that in the resources section next month, where we're going to talk about what works best. I'll give you a hint. A startup, personal vehicles is your least expensive way rather than trying to start a fleet. Private label samples, huge help. But you can start with your salesperson's car and the samples you've got just to get in and start testing the market. It's just really hard to get higher profits when you do those two things. And your optimization that's going to come from having a fleet and having Shop at Home samples that are private label is what allows you to get up to that 50% margin. You have to have a way of quoting on the house. Now, again, there's lots of different folks out there that have a lot of success without quoting in the house. but the numbers are much higher for closing rates for the people who can deliver a quote in the house. When that customer saw the product, he or she fell in love with the product, they want it for their house, but then they have to wait to get a price. That's not the way that we win sales. We win sales by asking for the order right then. So by being able to quote in the house, you need to have a process to do that. Most folks are going to use softwares to help speed that process up and get generalized numbers. In our third session, we're going to dig into that deeply on how to go in to actually quote, and you do it fast. You can do a whole house quote in 10 to 15 minutes. Next, there's this thing called the Federal Right of Rescission Act. It was put in place for consumer protection. It is a federal law. It is absolutely required for every document you get signed by a customer after an in-home visit. If you do sales on site, the customer has a right to cancel their order within 3 business days. That means that you have to do your business differently for shop at home. Material doesn't get ordered for at least a week. That allows you to have the time for the 3-day right of rescission cancellation for the customer and time for it to hit your door in the mail. Others will do it on day 4 with a call to the customer to confirm that their order is ready to be processed. Either way, there's documentation. Do a quick Google search for Federal Right of Rescission, download that proper copy, review it with your attorney, and it's got to be included in all of your paperwork for home sales. The customer has to acknowledge they have received that paperwork as part of your process, and the fine is $5,000 per instance if you get caught not using it. So this is a huge one. Don't miss it. Last, I want to just ask that everyone put a little of attention into the safety standards as you start out this business. Again, most of us will start with personal vehicles rather than commercial vehicles in a fleet. This requires safety dividers and making sure that our vehicles are not overweight with the samples that are being loaded into. A safety divider cage that could be something as simple as the little barriers you put up behind your front seats to keep the dog from coming over into the front area. That can keep samples, when you have to hit the brakes hard, from hitting the driver or passenger in the front of the vehicle. I would make it a requirement for anyone who's doing shop at home to have one of those barriers in their vehicles or provide it as part of the program for them. The overweight, every vehicle out there has a maximum capacity listed on the inside of the door, driver's door, that says, here's what the max is when they're sold. It's in, of course, the owner's manuals, if it's a newer car, and you can find that online, of course. Just make sure that they're not carrying too much weight in their vehicles with those samples, because the braking times are dramatically lengthened if they start going too much weight in cars, which creates risk for drivers and others. From a budget standpoint, there are 4 areas that we need to make sure that you have included in your plan. First, again, that dedicated marketing budget. That 7 to 10% of what you want to achieve for sales has to be allocated. Second is the vehicle and sample costs. Again, startup can be really affordable. It can be the personal vehicle with a safety barrier added and using your existing showroom samples at the start. So it can be very affordable. You've got the sales costs. Again, 10% is pretty normal for most markets. Even in the most rural markets, 8% of top line sales is the norm, with proper margins being carried. Now, of course, that would be lowered if they're messing up orders and things like that. It's going to drop the margins on the sales. But if they're hitting the target margins for your business, factor in that 8 to 10% for your cost of sales. Last, your software costs. Whatever it's going to take you to do 2 things: deliver a price in the house, and second, do the proper follow-up with that CRM system. It's got to be part of it. If you're not using a great CRM, this is my one plug: use Retail Lead Management. It is a game changer for most of our stores. So with that, this is kind of a high level intro to shop at home. Some of the things that you're going to need to consider for planning. Again, we're going to dive really deep into the resources needed and the processes in our next two sessions. But with that, I'm going to encourage you to join me on July 31st for session 2 to dig into that resources session, again, last Wednesday of the month. And I'm going to open it up for questions around the things that we've covered today. Again, that would be any of the components as to why, and of course, any of the business planning components. We'll just ask things that are related to additional resources, sales processes, etc. We're going to need to push those into our next sessions for Q&A.
All right, so as you just heard from Neil, and it looks like Neil's video connection failed. So we're bringing on Neil audio. Neil, can you hear us still?
I can hear you perfectly fine. How about you?
All right, awesome. So first off, Neil, thank you for sharing those insights. Neil has been doing Shop at Home for what, Neil, 20-something years? And when I've seen him present about Shop at Home, he has packed the room, and the insights are incredibly valuable. So definitely make sure you get to part 2, as Neil mentioned, but we're going to quickly get to some of the questions that were asked. So let's pull the first question up. All right, what should be used for forecasted close rates at the beginning? So Neil, where do you start? If you're starting out Shop at Home, how do you benchmark your success?
Yeah, the goal should be finding that sweet spot of a 50% close rate, but you're not going to start there if you're starting at the proper gross profit margins, and I encourage you to do. It's better to sacrifice a little bit of the close rate at the front and start with the proper gross profit margins rather than trying to bring your prices up after the learning curve. It's hard to put price increases on a new sales rep as they're learning. So from a business planning standpoint, starting at that 40% close rate, given that you're going to be in that 45 to 50% gross profit margin at the beginning is where you should benchmark for planning and financial purposes. You should be able to get that new RSA up to a 50% plus close rate at 50 points gross profit margin within about 4 to 6 weeks. And that's going to require a lot of ride-alongs. So have them watching you do it the way that you want it done in the presentations, which will actually cover recommendations in session 3 of what that could look like as examples. And then doing the ride-alongs with them doing it and you observing it, that 50% close rate at 50% gross profit margin pretty quickly. And if your close rates are higher than 50%, 50 points, keep it there for a while and do a small bump in margin, about 2% every 2 months or so, until you find some erosion on your close rate, and that'll be your sweet spot for your market.
Okay, so look, I think the general insight here is, especially when offering a new service or business, before you get to the point as you know where you want to be from a profit margin perspective, and especially close rate, crawl, walk before you run. Make sure that you have your process clearly defined. Your teams know how to do it, so that you're not, pricing yourself out. If there's going to be some hiccups and learning curves along the way. And it seems like, Neil, it's sort of a inverse relationship. Where the close rate is relative to the profit margin as one comes up. Hopefully they're both coming up. But if you're just starting out, sort of use those as 2 levers to find your sweet spot. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, it's better to sacrifice close rate percentage than margin at the beginning. You really want to start at that 45 to 50% gross profit, target 40 for budgeting, and then grow it as the skills are built.
All right. Clear takeaways. Start at 40. Sweet spots are 45 to 50, and just continue to work your way up. Awesome. All right. Let's pull up the next question. All right. So, is the schedule for appointments open or specific times? And I'm sure, Neil, this has to do with where you are in Shop at Home. Are you just starting out? Do you have multiple vehicles? Obviously, the way that we're discussing this, there's people who are starting this out. So, I think there's probably two different questions that come out of this too, right? If you're trying to do pure shop at home, how do you approach your schedule and appointments? Is it by appointment? Is it specific times that you're offering this? Because maybe you need to be in the showroom if you also have the brick and mortar. Neil, what is your advice there in terms of scheduling and appointments?
Yeah, great question. The rule of thumb is owners are going to be running the leads at the very beginning, or their GMs, so that they can coach and train. So it's got to be around the schedule that works for the person who's running that lead at the very beginning. But once you've got enough leads to cover a full-time hire, which is going to be in that 8 leads a week consistently delivered into your business, at that point, I'm going to recommend going with static time slots. A 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock a.m. as your morning slot, a 1 or 2 in the afternoon time slot, and then a 6 or a 7 o'clock time slot in the evening. By giving that big gap between those start times for the appointments, it allows for the variables that are needed for planning. Traffic with running, from one side of your town to the other side, you might be going 45 minutes in either direction. You need to build in that big time for travel, as well as the time with each customer. You don't want that to feel rushed. So again, the time slots I'm going to recommend is either a 9, 1, and 6 time slot, or if you want to push that back an hour, do a 10, 2, and 7. Again, that allows for lunch breaks, etc. With that full timer once you get it scheduled.
All right. So just again for everyone, Neil's recommendations start with the 9 a.m., 1 p.m., and 6 p.m. time slots, or conversely, bump it an hour, 10 a.m., 2 p.m., 7 p.m. And as you start to get deeper and deeper into the service and the space, you'll start to find those sweet spots for yourself. But I think definitely a helpful starting point. All right. I think we have one more question. Are discounts offered for first visit closes? I love that. Trying to get the deal while you're in the home. Great question. I think that came through email. Neil, what are your thoughts here? And does it make a difference if you also have a brick and mortar? Curious, if that strategy changes depending if you're trying to do shop at home only, or if it's brick and mortar as well.
Yeah, it's a tactic that's used by a lot of shop at home companies to say, because of efficiency, we can offer you a discount. You have to be really careful with that. It can create a high pressure, buy today kind of feel to it. In my experience, if you're going to offer a discount, don't set it to contingent on buying today. Offering a discount for whatever reason, being senior citizen, veteran discount, or whatever you want to offer to a consumer to make them feel good is a great thing, but tying it to buy today just creates undue pressure and a bad user experience. In fact, that's where Empire, in many instances, got some bad reputations for their sales tactics. So offer a discount anytime you want it, just don't tie it to the requirement of purchasing today.
Yeah, and on that front, you always hear the stories of the shop at home salespeople, not just specific to flooring, but you don't want to be sticking your foot in the door after the appointment, right? Because if you're not closing there, you're going to probably work your way out of that potential job and hurt your overall reputation. And that quick close is not worth losing this one deal and potentially future jobs with that client, and then potentially referral business from that client. What about, Neil, throw-ins, right? So instead of necessarily a discount, softening that offer as to something along the lines of, if you carry, let's say, area rugs or something along those lines. Is it, do you think it's a little less of a pressure situation if you, mentioned, if you're able to move forward today,
No.
we could throw in an
No.
area rug. So it's a little softer, not as aggressive.
It's still a pressure point that I'm going to discourage. Customers don't want to be beat over the head and put in a position where they have to buy immediately. Being able to present a price and overcome those objections, we'll talk about that in session 3, around ways to make that softened for a customer. We highly encourage a very self-directed feel to a sales approach for the consumer, so they don't feel that pressure. So anytime you tie in the word today, it's a pressure point. So I would discourage that.
All right.
Offer
So
discount, the discount, leave it at that. What other
All
questions
right.
do we have, Jeff?
That looks like the last one for now. I'm checking the chat. I don't see anything else coming through, but that's obviously because you did such a good job of explaining everything. So I think that's all we got for part 1. But stay tuned because we got 2 more parts with Neil coming in hot over the next few weeks or months. And again, Neil has an incredible wealth of knowledge in the space. If shop at home is something that you're thinking about, or even already starting to do, but not really sure which way to go, this series is going to be extremely helpful and valuable for flooring retailers and dealers. So make sure to join us back. Actually, tomorrow we have a special webinar and training. One of the hottest topics coming out of our boot camp with Jason Goldberg. It was earlier this month, on AI. Obviously, a super hot topic. Everyone wants to know about how to leverage AI, especially in your business, and what are the things can it actually help you do. It's not just copywriting anymore. When Gemini and ChatGPT first came out, it was really about providing sort of research and information coming through and helping analyze data. We're talking about ways to actually import data sets and output reports, ways to create logos, way to create jingles, real creative assets beyond the text. So that's tomorrow with Dan Pratt, one of our co-founders and chief revenue officers here at Broadloom. But for myself and Mr. Neil Daly, that is it for today's Webinar Wednesday. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Hope you can join us for that training Thursday on AI. You don't want to miss it. I promise you that. But with that, Neil, thank you so much for your knowledge and expertise, and we will see y'all later. Have a great day.